in the midst of a huge transformation where peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, and I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager here at AllVoices, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome our next guest onto the show, Yuri Kruman. He is the CEO of HR Talent and Systems. Thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture. If you want to share a little bit about yourself, including your pronouns, and how did you answer the question when you were younger, what do you want to be when you grow up?
First of all, Christina, thank you very much for having me on. It's really a pleasure to speak with you. So my name is Yuri Kruman, pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the CEO of HR Talent and Systems, which is an HR consulting agency. And I also run something I call Commander-in-Chief Media Group, which is based on a book I just published, Be Your Own Commander-in-Chief. And, essentially for this, I'm doing a podcast, a newsletter, etc. The podcast interviews leaders of fast growth companies to really understand what is their people strategy, how are they going about it, how have they leveraged that people strategy to get through inflection points in their journey of growing a company. And aside from that, I also contribute to Fast Company, Entrepreneur Newsweek. And I do some HR consulting. I come in as head of HR to different companies and help them build up their strategic HR from scratch.
Incredible. And when you were younger, what did you want to be?
I wanted to be, when I was very young, I had this kind of idea, I want to be a firefighter. I don't know where that came from, but I sure as hell fought a lot of fires in my life. Not always ones that I ignited, but nevertheless. And a little bit later, I think I was a teenager, I kind of had this very strange idea. I wanted to be a sort of human Google before there was such a thing as Google. So
now you're helping to solve complex problems within the people and HR space, which is really important. You fast forward to now, I know you mentioned you wrote another book, and one of the other kind of pieces that you wrote was around the Millennial Workplace Manifesto. And this was really to serve as a really concise guide for company HR officers. Knowing what world we live in right now, in this virtual first or remote first, hybrid approach for the workplace, what would you add to it now, the manifesto?
Well, just to make sure we're speaking about the same thing, the book is called What Millennials Really Want from Work and Life. Part of that grew out from something I wrote a few years back, called, the manifesto. So the manifesto was essentially a collection of thoughts about, look, I've had some really, truly terrible experiences working in, best companies to work for, all that great stuff. Something wasn't working on the HR people talent culture side. So one of the reasons why I went into this space was because I felt this acute pain over and over in different organizations, that people speak out of one side of their mouth and do something else. There's not much real time or resources devoted to personal and professional development. It's not done thoughtfully. It's just making sausage. I mean, I'm sorry to put it that way, but that's what I experienced. And I made it part of my mission to say, look, I'm pretty good with people. I'm pretty good with coaching people to either grow their career or to grow their business. And there has to be a better way to do this. We've got to stop the lip service. We've got to stop the nonsense. Let's do things in a genuine, thoughtful, and comprehensive way. And that's also one of the reasons why I wrote my most recent book, because it's called Be Your Own Commander-in-Chief. It's really looking at self-help through both a personal and a business lens and saying, look, it's not enough to just have a great morning routine or to wake up at 5 or, to be great at negotiation or, to be very good with your advisors and investors. There has to be a much bigger picture. Why are you doing this? What is this all for? Yeah, you have to address your health. Without that, you have nothing else. You have to think about your mental models and life skills. Most people don't go and learn, how to manage your finances or career or side hustle. And how do you manage expectations, make decisions, do all those, or cognitive biases. Actually, the biggest chapter in the book is about that. Now we talk a lot about DI and bias in that sense, but I think, very intelligent people that work in great places often cripple themselves because they have internal cognitive biases where they beat themselves up, not knowing what's going on. Why did they have them? So the book then talks about dealing with other people, the more classical coaching subjects. And the last piece is, having a conversation with God or the universe. So all these 4 pieces I found to be critical for learning and development. You can't just feed people, hey, do your time management better, take ownership. Okay, but what is this all for? How does this fit into my trajectory? Right? So it's my life mission to really help people, whether it's going to be as a head of HR in employee population or coaching someone one-on-one through creating content, any number of different things to help people become their own commander in chief, take control of their own personal and professional development.
I think that's really important in terms of the internal work, self reflection, asking yourselves a couple of those big questions, like you were talking about as well, and taking steps to achieve what you would like to achieve in life at that given time. I want to talk about being thoughtful and responsive. As you were talking about, so kind of examples of folks or organizations who are kind of taking steps to rethink how they have always done things. Can you give an example of an organization either who you have worked with or you've seen out in the universe who has truly been innovative and leaned into creative design with their HR strategies over the past almost 2 years now, or that's a process, strategy, or initiative?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a number of companies, but one in particular comes to mind because they actually make a lot of their things open source, and that's Atlassian. It's a company I greatly admire. They've been around a while, and one of their core tenets is everything that we do here that turns out to work really well, why not share it with the world? Right? So they've from the beginning already been very transparent and very accommodating to people that work all over the world, right? They have offices all over the world, and they're very open about helping people to become their best selves, and they give them the tools to do that. They give them the coaching to do that. So these are some of the things that were in place even long before COVID, but I think proved to be incredibly valuable in keeping people not just engaged, but coming back to work and wanting to stay here and wanting to continue to do their life's best work, without necessarily burning out or hiding themselves or trying to be someone else until they can find something better past COVID, right?
Absolutely. I think it's one thing to also look internally and see what you can do, where your employees are, and how you can empower them to do your best work and life's best work, but also making it open source and accessible to others to kind of read those best practices is also powerful, and it serves the community at large too. A lot of folks are talking about innovation and making sure that they're listening to their employees as people are doing more self-reflection. What's your recommendation for really refreshing a company's talent management process in 2022 and beyond to really help folks, especially managers and executives, and really anyone who's a culture conduit, do that internal work and also, progress at a company?
I hate to sound like a broken record, but I've been saying the same thing for a long time. This has not changed by COVID. It's only exacerbated. It's all about internal communication, right?
Mhm.
How much information, what types of information are shared within the company, from the top down, from the bottom up. Everything goes from that. If people don't feel comfortable sharing their story, okay, forget DI. They're not bringing even a tenth of themselves to work. They're coming in almost like in a cello case, pretending to be, yeah, sure, I'm like everyone else. That's the first sign of trouble. Okay,
Mhm.
but if you also have leadership not sharing, okay, the good, bad, the ugly, and everything in between, about how they're also human, maybe they also have kids, they have issues, whatever, right? Who's going to relate to them? Who's going to want to work for them? Because it's like, hey, you're probably making, I don't know, 50 times as much as I am with all your options, with all your whatever, right? I have to be able to relate to you as a human. I have to be able to see you as someone, I don't know, fallible with some, human. And if I don't feel that, how am I going to come into work and just pretend that, yeah, everything is great, everything is awesome, right? So if people, on the other hand, in a good situation, they feel open about sharing, again, sometimes it's openly if they're more extroverted, sometimes it's
Yeah.
in an anonymous way because we're not all extroverts, right? A lot of us hide behind the camera or we turn something on when we're on Zoom, but we all need downtime. We all need time to read and understand ourselves, right? So when you empower people to share the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, you allow them to, fail, to make mistakes, to try to find better ways of doing things, then you're going to encourage them to share their experience with their teammates, with leadership, and never mind with clients, with potential employees, right? That's what builds a brand.
Mhm.
So you can hang out a shingle up front, oh, this is our mission and values, but if you don't live them, I mean, come on, who's going to believe in this stuff? Right. So everything starts with that. And then from there, you can talk about systems, you can talk about coaching, employer branding, learning and development. Everything goes from there. But people have to feel like I'm fully myself at work, not because the company's checking boxes, but because they actually genuinely give a damn.
Yeah, you can tell when people are being disingenuous or they're being genuine, whether they're being authentic. We're not fans of box checkers here. We're thinking about the holistic perspective and what does effective communication look like? What is setting that foundation to feel like you can effectively communicate with your manager, with your peers, even with C-level executives as well? It all plays into that larger picture. How do you see really employee feedback management as an important tool to build that culture of listening, trust, innovation at, organizations?
Well, I'm putting myself back in the employee's seat, right? So if I'm, I don't know, early in my career or in the middle of my career, okay, I'm probably pretty intelligent. I probably have quite a few choices where I can go work, right? So I can build my career here, somewhere else. Most of these situations are transactional, right? I'm just here to collect the logo on my resume, get the right experience, the right skills, take advantage of professional development. Maybe if I'm lucky, I have a great boss and the boss pushes me and whatever, right? Most of the time, again, people are just like, yeah, I'm coming in, checking the box, I'm doing my projects, and like, either you promote me or I'm getting the hell out of here. Right. So in order to create something genuine and lasting and thoughtful where people want to stay with you, they want to learn with you. And yeah, of course, they want to be with you in the proverbial trenches and work maybe 80-hour weeks, maybe it's a little bit later stage and it's not that much 50, 60, right? But if you want people to stay and really feel like part of something, you have to give them all kinds of different channels to express themselves, to communicate. Again, sometimes it's going to be good news. Sometimes you finish something ahead of budget or whatever, ahead of time. But most of the time, it's going to be something like, look, this is not working. You've got crappy systems. You have no policies or procedures. You're moving fast and breaking things, but you don't have any bloody clue what you're actually doing. Right? Because let's be frank, startups, smaller companies, usually that's what's happening. So when you give room to people to express themselves, especially people earlier in their career that may not be as open, they may not know all the politics, they may not know all the rules. I mean, hell, they're lucky if they've seen people in a physical office setting, right?
Right.
Imagine what that does to you in your earlier parts of your career, right? So maybe you have some hints of that, but you don't feel open. Forget it. You're completely isolated. You're just checking boxes for 6 months and you're out of here until you get something better. So if you provide those channels for open feedback, anonymous feedback, maybe it's Slack, you get people to share things through whatever channel they feel comfortable. Maybe it's in person at a coffee shop. You give them those opportunities, they're going to really help you identify the gaps. They'll tell you the best ways to fix those gaps. That's how you really start building a great culture. When you take care of your employees, they take care of your clients. You take care of your clients, you've got a great business.
Absolutely. It's a very cyclical effect there, and you open up a lot of opportunities, whether it's one-on-ones, whether it's anonymous feedback, whether it's kind of pulse surveys as well. You make sure that you open up all of them because not everyone is going to be the same in terms of how they want to give that feedback, also receive feedback too. And again, that layer of trust that when you give that feedback, something's going to be done about it, or you'll have that two-way communication of this is why we can't prioritize this right now. You mentioned this a little bit in terms of why this is important, but I don't think it can be overemphasized in the different channels. Why is it important to offer anonymous ways for employees to give feedback?
Well, again, there's just the simple principle of safety, right? If you don't create a safe workplace where someone's going to retaliate against me, I know it because my boss is jealous. My boss is, a new manager and has no clue how to manage people. If you don't provide that anonymous feedback, a lot of that withers on the vine. And again, the person will much rather quit because of the bad manager if they have no other recourse. And you can do all the employee engagement surveys in the world and you can surface all of the demographics and this and that. But if you do nothing about it, yeah, well, see you later, right? Maybe I'll get to use Culture M properly somewhere else or whatever other tool, right? So that's the key piece. You want to make sure your feedback doesn't wither on the vine. because that means your company's withering on the vine. And you may not know it because you're sitting at the top and, oh, yeah, look at our numbers. Look at our numbers.
Yeah, I think that's really important to recognize as well, and making sure you're getting feedback from all aspects. You could have a great company culture too and not be afraid of retaliation from your current manager, but you could have had that at another organization. So you think it's the same here. So taking into everyone's experiences is really important. We've been talking about, this general theme of retention and employee experience too, really making sure that employees feel like they are contributing to the company, making an impact, and really making sure their voices are heard. In your opinion, what are qualitative and quantitative ways we can measure kind of company culture and employee happiness?
I mean, again, everything goes back to partly quantity of communication. You want to make sure that, again, in our modern world, we think of everything as search engines, right? So you have YouTube, Google, LinkedIn, etc. So Slack is another one where you can, let's say, go back and search, hey, you know what were we talking about in that meeting? Or what are we talking about in that thread? Or how did we mention this system or that project, right? And you can feed all the different pieces in there. You can put the project management, you can put performance, management, an API through that. You can do all of these different things in one place. And then if you're able to go back and kind of make sure information is shared, that makes everything easier. So, that's where I would start. Make sure that you have one kind of source of truth where you can have that repository and make sure everyone is aware of things.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It goes back to effective communication too, as well. It's a two-way street. I know I've been asking a lot of questions about what you're seeing in terms of trends and what's happening at thriving company cultures, but what's taking up the most space in Yuri's mind right now in terms of the next problem or situation you're trying to solve?
Let's pause, right? Schrodinger's cat. We've got to see what's going on there. I would say that I'm starting to see that, let's say, all of us are, whatever we're doing in our career, we're all media companies, like it or not, right? So we all have to create content. We all have to do that for our work, for our side hustle. So one of the things I'm trying to solve is essentially how to help people. And again, this applies equally whether I'm a head of HR or I'm a coach or I'm trying to do this through my books or whatever other source. I'm trying to find a way to help people see things through that way and not to just create content for the sake of content, but something that's meaningful and personal and something that helps them enter their zone of genius in order to progress toward achieving their life mission. So again, whether that happens at work by helping align people with their zone of genius, right? Whether that means doing that by helping people switch careers or change companies, let's find a way to help people to do this in a thoughtful, meaningful way without waiting for something, waiting for a boss, waiting for a company to pay for it without something, right? That's, again, going back to that theme of be your own commander in chief. So my goal is essentially to empower people to take ownership of their career, their business, their life, in order to find, okay, this is the company where I can grow and do my best work. Yes, I can contribute and all of that, but this fits into my trajectory. So I'm finding a way to align incentives for talent and for companies to do things in really the right way, to create a virtuous cycle.
Mm-hmm.
That's what occupies a lot of my time.
I mean, I think that makes sense in terms of it occupying a large part of your time, because that alignment is so critical, and it does take a long-term strategy. It has to take conversations and really internal work on both ends of the company, the individuals, the leaders, and also the person who's joining the organization and contributing to the company's mission as well. You mentioned at the top of our conversation, you've seen a lot in terms of your experiences, and you wanted to do things, against the kind of status quo and really promote innovation and, different ways of doing things. What are some common mistakes you're seeing companies make in their people strategies today, aside from not having effective communication?
Good Lord, where do I start? Yeah, I mean, aside from that obvious pain point, I would say that there's a lot of box checking. There's a lot of compliance thinking. There's a lot of just glossing over problems or actively covering them up, right? So a lot of this has to do around Our work culture, right? In America, the work culture is basically you come in, you squeeze yourself into some box or some cello case, and you just endure it, and you pay your dues and you do your thing and you go with the flow, and choose your banality, right? We want to get past that. We want to find a way to create genuine alignment as early as possible in a person's career. And that benefits the company, that benefits the employee and everybody else, right? So if we're able to do that, and if we're able to not just call BS and say, oh, I poke a finger in your eye, because that's easy, right? We know where the holes are. But to create some kind of meaningful system where, this is something that I heard on a Tim Ferriss podcast, I believe it was Safi Bakal who mentioned it. There's this idea of chief incentives officer, right? So it's an incredible idea, which I came across maybe 2-3 years ago. It's in my book as well. If you have somebody within a company that is the chief incentives officer, that person's mandate is to look for, how do I get the best work out of each person? Is going to vary vastly between different teams and functions and career stages. Never mind backgrounds, okay? Because people want totally different things, but also those things tend to take patterns. So if you have somebody thinking about it and aligning a person's career with particular projects that help them grow, create the right, let's say, benefit strategy, the right kinds of employee engagement strategy, right? If you have that sort of thing actively going on from the beginning of a person's career, imagine how much that empowers them. Imagine how much they want to stay around in that so they can keep growing, right? And it's an incredible idea. But beyond that, again, I always fall back on personal responsibility, because I'm an immigrant, for a number of different reasons. And for that reason, I strongly believe that every single person has to be their own chief incentives officer. In fact, that's one of my core goals for my book and for my work in general. I want each person to understand themselves and to understand what's driving them, and then to create the right conditions for them to be incentivized to do that best work wherever they are, whether they're doing it through building someone else's company, building their own, creating content, right, telling their story. All of these things align in that way. I know who I am. I know where I'm going. I'm doing everything I can to get there by being in my zone of genius for as much as I can, as often as I can, so I can achieve my life mission. And yes, of course, so I can find meaning, I can find clarity, I can have impact. And yes, that will ensure I will be successful.
For folks who are managers or who are leading teams, who have different folks who have different kind of goals in mind. So maybe someone wants to, be a chief revenue officer, someone wants to start their own business, someone wants to be an enterprise account executive, for example. What is your advice to leaders for, once you know what's motivating them and having that, like creating that alignment to ensure success for the team on a whole? I guess what I'm asking is, how do you kind of scale that personal experience to make sure that you are kind of meeting everyone's needs, but also doing it in the most efficient way for the team, if you're managing maybe 20 folks or even 5 people as well with different motivators?
So first of all, let's take this premise. If you're a manager, especially a manager of many people, your number one priority, above all, 80% of your time, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more, should be devoted toward empowering your people to do their best work, because you're being measured on their success. Right. Most managers, when they first start out, it's a total shock to their system. Wait a minute, I'm used to my work being graded, right? It's all about me and my individual contribution.
Sure.
So the hinge point for a lot of companies is they fail to train their managers in a thoughtful way on how to coach other people. They don't get the manager coaching, or that coaching is not somehow aligned or proper with that person's background or something else. It's just throwing 3 sessions and saying, hey, now you've got to be a great manager. Right? So that's the hinge point for a lot of organizations. And some of them call me up and say, hey, can you come in, and we need you to train this manager of managers, and that person just doesn't know how to make a good performance review or something else, right? It's like, whoa, step back. You've got all the incentives misaligned. You're not doing that process with the manager of managers, and you're expecting him or her to do that for his or her people. Hold on, like something's not aligning here.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the first thing, right? You have to make sure that your process is uniform and uniformly robust for everyone in your company, right? Get people at the same level who are managers to coach each other first. Do it in a safe setting so they don't feel like they're judged. Okay. And then they can go back and say, okay, well, look, here are our career pathways. Okay. So you're at this level. We want to put you at the next level. Here is what it's going to take for you over the next 6 months, 9, 12 months, whatever, right? You check those boxes. You're going to be up for promotion. We're going to look to have you paid more. Okay. So everything should be standardized. And then you should look at the person on their own merits and say, okay, but what's driving you? Where do you want to go? Right? Is this in fact the path that you want within this vertical? Maybe, you would feel better to stay here in this company if we switched you to the chief revenue officer track or the COO track, right? Because I noticed that you're really good at this and this and this, but maybe you don't like numbers, so you're not a CFO type. God bless, no problem. You have to be open, you have to be transparent, and you just have to take the whole human into account, right? Not everyone will want to stay in the same track, right? People have different trajectories, they have different speeds of getting to a certain level, right? So just start out with a standardized system where you know what the career pathways are. Train your coaches to be good coaches, have them coach each other first so it's safe, and then have them go back and listen, actually listen. This is the hardest part. Just sit and listen and shut your mouth. Then you can answer afterwards how to solve the problem. But just listen to a person and hear their story. Where are they going? What do they want from life? Can you help them? And if you can't help them here, maybe they can be helped somewhere else. Maybe they're harming your team because they're not aligned.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Then you can go from there.
Those 3 steps, I feel like having the common language, framework, guidelines in place, then making sure that your managers are resourced, because I do believe there are no born people managers. It's a huge shock to the system, as you were talking about, to have your individual work graded, you're contributing, but then to empower other folks, it's a skill you need to learn. You need to understand these coaching, ask the right questions, and then of course, active listening too, because every person is different. I want to ask about your opinion about how you've seen the HR people space change over time. I know you mentioned that you've been hammering home the same kind of message and you're hoping people, ingrain that in effective communication, but are there any positive, negative, anything in between changes you've seen happen over the past couple of years that you want to highlight?
I'll try to highlight the good, the bad, and potentially even the ugly. I think good, in terms of good developments, HR has a seat at the table, at the C-suite table. I would say that, I'm looking at some statistics, somewhere around half of all the issues brought up in leadership meetings are around HR for the last, almost 2 years. So on the one hand, that sounds great, awesome, they're paying attention finally. Yeah. On the other hand, it's like, well, yeah, but all HR people are burned out. They often don't have a great budget. They don't have much in terms of resources. And they're fed up, right? A lot of the recommendations they give rub up against, well, we've always done things a certain way and that won't work here. Or, you know what, if they don't like it, they can leave. Like a lot of very backwards command and control thinking. I hate to say it, but even with some of my clients, I've come across that. And it's very painful to see when you build all these systems, you do all the coaching, you really empower people, encourage them, motivate them, and then management comes in and says, well, command and control, we have to go back to that. Why am I here? Why did you bring me here, guys? Exactly. Right? And then I would say that, there's more awareness for individuality. There's more awareness that, okay, now that we have to watch our hide because, laws, regulations around DEI, for example, the box checking didn't work when the riots happened. So what do we do? How do we actually do this in a thoughtful way? How do we actually do learning and development? How do we do employee resource groups? How do we make things maybe a little bit more fair? How do we help people tell their stories? How do we help belonging to happen at work? But there's more of a conversation towards it. It's a slow progress. You always have, it's not illogical, the business outcomes. Everything is about business outcomes. So the conversations start, well, okay, what's the business case for DI? And it's like, why are we talking about business case of DI?
Yeah.
Why are we talking about this? This doesn't make any sense, right? But business is business. People in leadership and management, they have to make the numbers, whatever they are. So you have to make that case. The HR person, the head of HR, and everyone in HR has to understand business in a fundamental way. So yeah, everything becomes a business case. You pitch a system, it's a business case. You pitch a framework, hey, this is that added value, right? So we're slowly moving the dial, but it's still very slowly, and there's still a lot of this kind of legacy thinking of, oh, HR must be paper pushing, and that guy in the office. And it's like, oh my God, people grow up.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think HR and kind of people teams have a really large seat at the table. I'm hearing a lot of conversations around they're expected to fix anything and everything, which speaks to your point about burnout and really understanding having a thoughtful and responsive, as you were talking about, strategy in place, not a band-aid or box checking solution. I know I asked a lot of questions around strategy and what you're seeing works well and works not based on your experience, but Yuri, is there anything that I either didn't ask that you want to share with the audience listening, or 1 to 2 key insights you hope people really bring with them after they listen to our conversation?
Well, civilization is crumbling. No. Okay, I'm not going to go there. But as I mentioned, I try to think about bigger picture issues. I mean, the
Right.
book that I mentioned, it's kind of a life philosophy, not just some tips and tricks. So for me, when I'm trying to, again, go into an enterprise and help people, again, to see the bigger picture, to empower themselves to kind of take control of their journey, I think that a lot of people are struggling because they're just holding on. They're just, I just have to keep this job. I have to pay the mortgage. I have to, make sure that I don't know. Forget saving. Like people, a lot of people are in a lot of trouble, whether it's financially or what have you. So they're holding on to something. So I want to encourage those people. I myself have gone through quite a lot of that. I'm in my sixth career, right? So I think that it's very important to be able to pause and say, look, everything is anyway in flux, everything is anyway unpredictable. Just be your fullest self and just figure out what you're meant to do. Then go back and figure out where you can do that, where you can help your trajectory go in that direction. Does this organization fit your mission and values, right?
Mhm.
So, like it or not, work is incredibly transactional. And if anything, COVID has exacerbated it that much more. Right.
Absolutely.
For those people that are not working in their perfect jobs in the perfect companies, there are people like that. They're engaged, they're loving it. God bless. Festivus for the rest of us, we have to think from our own, our own core, our own lens. And that's what I want to encourage people to do. Look, not all employers are bad. Not all bosses don't give a damn, right? There are many truly genuinely good people that care about their employees. They're going through crap. They're trying their best. But if you really want to get far in life, you have to know who you are, where you're going. Then you figure out where, what are you going to pass through to get to that place. And you can make mistakes. I mean, again, I've made many mistakes in my sixth career. If you figure it out along the way, because you really try hard to figure yourself out, you'll succeed and you'll find a way.
Know thyself. Don't mold yourself to the company or the role. Think about what you really want to do, where you want to go, and then do your research from there. So again, looking inward first before looking at all of the many, many external factors. I think that's a good call to action for folks who are listening, and a great way to kind of cap off our conversation. Yuri, thank you so much for spending this afternoon with us.
Thank you so much, Christina. Great conversation.
Of course. And as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we believe in employee feedback management, and hearing from all voices at the company is a requirement for the company to succeed. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everyone.